I am so happy and honored to be here. I had the privilege of working with your Board of Trustees on Friday night and with your amazing leaders at the Leadership Summit yesterday. And I have to tell you, you have a group of very intelligent, committed, and energetic leaders, and you are lucky. That's great. It's a great congregation. And it's also wonderful to be here to see some old friends. Back when I was at the Eno River Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Durham, North Carolina, we had the youngest president we ever had in that congregation. She was only 27 years old, and she was one of the best presidents we ever had, and her name was Leslie Takahashi. And then David and Garner joined the congregation, and I was the minister who dedicated Liam, and so it's just really great to be here. It's fabulous to see you, and I've enjoyed my time with you very much. Last year, a United Church of Christ minister by the name of Lillian Daniel caused a big stir in the blogosphere. And when I read her post, I really related to it because I shared a fear with her. I shared the fear with her that somebody on a plane was going to ask me what I did for a living. And I was worried about the same response that she got more often than not, which is, I'm spiritual, but not religious, in a really smug, self-congratulatory tone. So I really related to her words. Here's what she wrote. Like people who go to church don't see God in the sunset? Like we are like these monastic little hermits who never leave the church building? How lucky we are to have these geniuses inform us that God is in nature. As if we don't hear that in the Psalms, the creation stories, and in our deep tradition. She goes on, being privately spiritual but not religious just doesn't interest me. There's nothing challenging about having deep thoughts all by yourself. What is interesting is doing this work in community where other people might call you on stuff or, heaven forbid, even disagree with you, where life with God gets rich and provocative is when you dig deeply into a tradition that you did not invent all by yourself. There's more. Thank you for sharing, spiritual but not religious sunset person. You are now comfortably in the norm of self-centered American culture, right smack in the bland majority of people who find ancient religions dull, but find themselves uniquely fascinating. Can I switch seats now and sit next to someone who's been shaped by a mighty cloud of witnesses instead? Can I spend my time talking to someone brave enough to encounter God in a real human community? Because when this flight gets choppy, that's who I want by my side, holding my hand, saying a prayer, and simply putting up with me, just like we do in church. So I just love that. And of course, I shared it on Facebook. And I thought, all my friends on Facebook and congregants were going to just like it just as much as I did. And that's not exactly what happened. Not everybody really liked it. I had some pretty strong reactions against this. And it is pretty snide. I really enjoyed reading it, by the way. But the fact is that many, many people have been deeply scarred by the religious tradition that they came from. And they have reasons to distrust organized religion. Not only that, but our culture is getting more and more secular. There are religious demographers who say that within a generation or a generation and a half, we will be as secular in North America as people in Europe are. Here's a fact that might surprise you. Most of the younger generation, people in their 20s typically, were not brought up in church or any other organized religious congregations. They don't know the church lingo, the church lore, the church behavior, and they don't really want to. Some of the young adults in the church I just served talk about how when they tell their friends that they're going to church on Sunday morning and can't join them for brunch, they're looked at like they have 3 ears. It's, what? You go to, you know. And the nuns are the fastest growing cohort in American religion. I'm not talking about Catholic nuns. I'm talking about those when they fill out a survey and are asked their religion, put none. The fastest growing cohort. And this is especially true among our young adults. And with good reasons. When young adults do wander into a religious community, often their experience is that they are judged because they're gay, lesbian, transgender, or just because of the way they dress, before people even get a chance to know them. Young adults tend to see religious people as judgmental, rigid, old-fashioned, and even mean. And yeah, if you read the papers and watch the news, you'll see that there's some reason to believe that. And of course, it's hard to overestimate the way that the Roman Catholic priest and the cover-up scandal has soured people toward the whole idea of religion when you had such a gross corruption of the Roman Catholic authority, a criminal, literally criminal corruption of religious authority. And the televangelists keep having their antics. And then there's the religious right who espouse hateful ideas that younger generations do not share in the same way that older generations do. Hateful language against gays, for instance, single parents. Religion has a bad brand, as they say in the marketing world. But you know, people do have deep spiritual needs. People have options because the consumer culture will provide them. So right now, if you're bored with this sermon, I'm sure you can find a yoga class that's going on at this moment. And Oprah's big show on faith is right now. It starts at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. Now, of course, we Unitarian Universalists don't fit that category. We're not rigid, mean, old-fashioned. We do have what newer generations want in terms of an approach to the big questions of life. They say they want an approach where they can explore their own experiences of God, the universe, and everything, to look at their own way of learning and appreciating life, where their experience is valued. An open search, not easy answers. And people are coming. This is according to the Mormons who spoke to a UUA official from their evangelism office. We are the envy of all other religions in terms of the number of people who visit our churches and congregations. People are looking for a religion that's just like ours, or at least just like what we say we are. And they're not doing it on a whim. People don't change their Sunday morning routines on a whim at all. Usually there's some kind of a deep life change or crisis that leads them here, hungry and expectant. afraid, and hopeful. It's not easy to walk into a room full of strangers. That's why you can bring a friend to church. But too often they're turned off by the way people do things the way it's always been done and ignore them very often. I know that's not true in your congregation, but my wife Sonia, when I do pulpit supply, she will come with me, and she won't be introduced as my wife. She'll just be like any other visitor. More often than not, no one talks to her. Before Peter Morales became president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, he was fond of saying that we don't have a marketing problem. We're getting people looking at our product, if you will. We have a sales problem. And if we want to grow, we just have to repel fewer visitors. Now, your church is exceptional. I will tell you that. It is. Since the recession that started in 2008, Unitarian Universalism has been declining precipitously in terms of children participating in our religious education program. And not just Unitarian Universalism, but all religions except Catholicism, including the Southern Baptist Convention and the megachurches, have been declining. But you haven't. You've been growing during that time. You bucking the trends. You've been growing not just in members, but in worship attendance, in giving, in programs. You are truly exceptional. But even this congregation can't afford to ignore the hungers and the hopes of those people who are coming through your doors. Everybody needs community. Study after study shows that social isolation is deadlier than smoking or lack of exercise and causing premature death. Coming to church is good for you. That's science. Really. Because we humans are mammals, and not only are we mammals, we're higher apes, which means that we can't be fully human without being in bands and tribes. We need to be able to rub up against each other, to look at each other, to smell each other. We need to be with other people to be fully human. And unfortunately, we live in the loneliest society that history has ever produced. More and more people are lonely. According to Robert Putnam, a Harvard sociologist, about a third of the people in this country have no one they can confide in when their lives fall apart, as they all do at some time. It hurts us. It kills us. We're dying young. Our spirits are dying young. Our affections are dying young. And the cure for that is community. Some place where you can go to be yourself and where you don't have to hide your hurts and triumph. We need it to be fully human. In an interview, poet Christian Wyman said, "Religion is everything that we do with these moments of intense spirituality in our lives. Whether it's whatever practice we have, whether it's going to church, whether it's how we integrate sacred text into our lives. Being religious or taking on some sort of religious elements in your life, you're not necessarily saying, 'I agree with everything that this religion says.' What you are saying is that you've had these incredible experiences in my life of suffering or joy or both, and they've demanded some action of me and demanded some continuity from me. And the only way that I know to do this is to try to find some form in it and to share it with other people. That sounds great, being in community and all, and we really do need it. But it's not the easiest thing in the world, especially for those of us, and that's about all of us, who've been brought up in this consumer culture where our job is to shop around until we find just the perfect thing to fit our desires. And people certainly do that with their spiritual lives. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. But when you join a religious community, well, it can get tough sometimes. It's not like Burger King where you get your own way. And that's really good, because that helps us grow beyond our narrow individual egos, our narrow individual wants and needs. It is really good for us to have an interpersonal balanced diet, which includes people that rub us the wrong way, and learning how to get along with them. It's vital to our spiritual growth. One of my favorite religious writers is the Reverend Nadia Bolz-Weber. So imagine this 6-foot-tall woman in her 30s, absolutely covered in tattoos and piercings, a former stand-up comedian, a recovering drug addict, who has founded a Lutheran church near Denver called the Church of All Sinners and Saints, and that's everybody. And she ministers to those people who you would think would never go to church, those people on the margins of society, those people who feel alienated from American culture. That place is a home for them. And during those new member classes, she says something quite radical. She says, "Prepare to have your heart broken in this community." I'll quote what she said. "I say, I'm glad you love it here, but at some point, I will disappoint you, or the church will let you down. Please decide on this side of that happening is, after it happens, will you still stick around? Because if you leave, you'll miss the way that God's grace comes in and fills in the cracks in our brokenness. And it's too beautiful to miss. Don't miss it." Last summer, I visited a theological school classmate of mine who is the minister of the oldest church in London, oldest Unitarian church in London. And he told me that the average attendance at British Unitarian churches is 8. 8. And the joke is that half of them are visitors from North America. The college at Oxford, where Unitarian, they don't have the Universalist part, in England, ministers in England have been trained as now a conference center, because they're not training them, except in correspondence kind of things. And that's where we're headed. If we don't listen to our visitors, if we don't stay open to the possibilities of our future, because our society is headed to a society that's as secular as the United Kingdom and Europe. So there is no risk-free choice here. We either try new things, we're willing to make mistakes, we try to meet the yearnings and hopes of those who look for that religious community that can literally save them, or we just try to please the members we already have. Try to help them be as comfortable as possible, make sure nobody's really mad, and then preside over the last memorial service for the last elderly member and lock the door. Really. Many Unitarian Universalist churches are going to die in the next 10 to 15 years, because there is no sense of purpose beyond the comfort and the desires of the current members. It's a confusion about mission. Churches need a mission like yours, and it needs to be part of everything they do. Let me tell you a story that was recently been told by the Reverend Erica Hewitt, who was doing a wedding for two women in Georgia, rural Georgia. And the wedding went really well. And as she was going back to her car, she saw two women embracing and weeping. And when she went over to them, she asked, what was happening? Could she help? And they said they were weeping tears of joy and relief because they had been told in the Baptist faith that they had been brought up in that they were sick. They were lesbians. That they were sick, that they were evil, that they were wrong, and they had to choose between their families and their faith or part of who they are, an essential part of who they were. They were crying because it was so healing for them to be in a religious ritual that recognized all of who they were, that honored the love that their friends had, which was like the love that they had. That's why our faith saves people. If you ask people what about mission, that's it. A place for those two women. It breaks my heart when somebody finally leaves an oppressive and soul-scarring religious tradition that they might have grown up in, and they don't know we exist as a place for them to be accepted and healed. It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart when young people who've been brought up in a stifling religious environment go to college, learn about science and a greater world out there, and reject the faith of their childhood and then think they need to leave their religious community behind forever and don't know we exist. That breaks my heart. Our mission is to offer friendship and acceptance and community to those people who come to this congregation and others like it in fear and in hope, because their lives need to change. We human beings have such potential. Our consciousness, our potential for wonderful healing communities. Let's be the place where people can grow into their full stature as humans. May it be so.